You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, and more. Cryptocurrencies and other digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity. Provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments on everything from coins to tokens, futures, and even OTC options. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVol, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVol Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again for the Crypto Rundown, the program here on the Options Insider Radio Network, where we explore everything beyond our traditional stomping grounds. Going to look a little bit farther afield, past the Apples and the Teslas and the SPY and the exploding SPX daily options, and see what's going on in the Bitcoin, the ETH, Solana, a whole bunch of other fun crypto products. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the aforementioned network. Reminding you, if you like what you hear, do keep rating and reviewing out there. Coming off November, which was just, I think the technical term is ridiculous. So many new people continuing to discover the network, even though in January it'll be 16 plus years. It's crazy. And a lot of people discovering the Crypto Rundown as well. So if you like what you hear, do keep rating and reviewing out there. It does help all the new folks, and they are clearly legion. All the new folks continue to discover not just the Crypto Rundown, but the full network. And then, of course, if you like what you hear, you want to go above and beyond. You want to get, indeed, exclusive pro Q&As, great pro Q&As with Mr. Tony Saliba, who does run Mercury Digital Assets. I think our guest today will be very familiar with him, as well as, of course, all of the great options, oddities, sessions, giveaways, live streams, and, of course, access to the pro podcast feed. You know where to go, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. is the place to go to learn more as we keep on rolling right on into the crypto hot seat.
Forget about cold storage. It's time to turn up the heat on thought leaders from the world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time to take their place on the Crypto Hot Seat.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Crypto Hot Seat, the portion of the show where we welcome on guests from throughout the world of crypto, derivatives, and indeed beyond, and proceed to pick their brains for the benefit of you, the listener. Today's guest is a newcomer to the program and indeed to the network. He is Ryan Hansen, the head of sales over there at Liquid Mercury. Ryan, welcome to the Crypto Rundown program.
Hey, Mark. Thanks a lot for having me on the show. Definitely appreciate it.
And Ryan, as we are wont to do with all of our first timers here on the network, why don't you go ahead and give our audience a bit of an overview of your background in the financial space, as well as what it is you do day to day over there at Liquid Mercury.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I spent the bulk of my career in derivatives and foreign currency trading at different brokerages in trading technology firms. I worked a lot in futures and FX trading, and I came into crypto in 2017 to help build and launch a crypto derivatives exchange. So kind of broke away from traditional capital markets into crypto, which has been a very wild ride. It was, the kind of last bull market prior to the one that we had that's now clearly ended. And then I've been with Liquid Mercury here for the last 3+ years. It was interesting kind of in a way, came full circle. So the way I got kind of into futures trading was a recommendation from a local on the CME floor to come back and read Market Wizards' book, which our CEO, Tony Saliba, was profiled in. So I had originally read the Market Wizards book, which so many kind of industry professionals and traders had done, and then had the opportunity to meet Tony, and then, join one of his companies, which is great. So I work with Tony now on a daily basis, and it's awesome.
Yeah, Tony has been on the network many times, but you are indeed our first guest from, I keep wanting to say Mercury Digital Assets. You guys have, of course, rebranded. It is now Liquid Mercury. So our first guest from Liquid Mercury. So why don't we start there, Ryan? Why don't you go ahead and give our audience a bit of an overview of what it is you folks do over there at Liquid Mercury?
Sure. We provide trading technology solutions to institutional and professional traders. So one of our solutions automates a OTC desk. Allows people to be able to kind of fully run their business. So brokers, banks, crypto ATM firms, fintech apps will use this to kind of power their trading. So eliminating manual transactions, things that would be very kind of commonplace within traditional capital markets like FX, don't necessarily exist within crypto. So we built this out, runs that. And then we have a professional trading order execution management system for traders to be able to trade options, futures, perpetual swaps, as well as spot products within crypto. And this could be proprietary traders, asset managers, people that need to hedge their books if they're doing some kind of hedging strategy, or be able to just run their own proprietary strategies for speculative purposes.
And you guys just announced a big integration with the folks over there at Gemini, trying to bring a little bit more to the retail crypto trader out there. What are you guys working on with Gemini, Ryan?
We did. We developed what we're calling our Plus platform. So taking components that we used for building our OTC foundation and really kind of extending out. So what we're running into were people that were interested in coming into crypto, especially last year and kind of onwards from traditional markets. And they were hitting kind of a blocker where they may not be comfortable with kind of everything that happens. It's different than operating in stocks or futures or whatever asset class they support. And they needed kind of assistance. And so we had part of the solutions we were providing already for people that were more crypto native firms, being able to run their business, and they may be comfortable with the custody aspect or trading with multiple counterparties. But, this new crowd wasn't necessarily that way. So they wanted us to serve as a bridge to be able to come into crypto, have fewer moving parts, and more of a completely integrated offering. So things that we do proficiently on the trading side, we're not necessarily going to do on like being able to be a custodian, for example, or get regulatory licenses to operate as like a money service business or money transmitter. So we were looking for partners to be able to kind of fill these different gaps and have a complete, very kind of integrated offering. So we did pretty exhaustive search of players in this space within crypto. Chose Gemini, which is a great partner for us there. They're fully regulated in 50 states, 60 plus countries. They can handle kind of different fiat currencies, all the crypto custody, security, things like that. So we've recently launched this. We're bringing our first client online. This allows people to extend out, whether they're like a brokerage or a fintech app or like a content publisher, and has an audience to be able to offer crypto trading out there. And it's writing the kind of combined platform of the trading technology that Liquid Mercury provides, and then other parts of the kind of workflow that Gemini provides. So we're very excited about it. Not the best of time given where prices are at, some of the different headlines that have come out around crypto, but we're in this for the long term. We believe that kind of what comes out of the challenging times that have cropped up this year are going to be great going forward. And so we're very excited about this new product offering.
I have no idea what you could be referring to with those bad headlines there, Ryan. It's a mystery to me completely. But we all know, Ryan, at the end of the day, you're nothing. You're no one in the crypto space until you have your own token. You folks over there at Mercury rectified that last year, launching your Merc token. So catch our listeners up on what is the Merc token? What can you do with this thing?
Sure. It's a utility token that clients of ours can use within the platform. So we have institutional clients that are able to get discounts on the services that we provide for the trading technology, and individuals that use this Plus solution are able to get different software bundle that we're putting together to do more involved analysis around crypto, things that are kind of missing within the crypto trading space that you may find within being able to view like a options portfolio or stock portfolio, things like that, that we want to bring in and provide value. So you're able to get access to that, be able to get discounts on, or rebates on, trading fees rather. And so, yeah, we're very excited about this. We've, spent a lot of time and effort on it, and, look forward to having the Merc out there in the wild, so to speak.
Well, we'll get to all your thoughts on the price action out there in Bitcoin and the rest in a little bit. But you mentioned some of the negative headlines we've seen recently, Ryan. I'm not sure if you were there at FIA a couple of weeks ago, but it was a pretty striking visual to go walking into FIA, which, listeners, is the largest global derivatives conference. Certainly brings the entire global industry together on the future side and brings them all to Chicago. So exchanges from all over the world, brokers, trading firms, you name it, from all over the world descend on Chicago for 1 week. And that was a few weeks ago. And of course, it happened to be the exact week that all of this FTX madness broke. And it was, like I said, an interesting, perhaps alarming visual to walk into that conference, which is usually plastered with the names of the marquee franchises in the world of derivatives, or your CME groups, your NASDAQs, and all those kind of names you've heard of and know of very well. And to see them frantically scrambling to scrape off the FTX name that was above everybody else out there. They had really ponied up to be the marquee sponsors of this event. It showed you just how far their tentacles had reached and how far they had spent customer and client money to really spread that name far and wide. So as you mentioned, these are interesting times from a headline perspective. What are you hearing from folks as you're engaging behind the scenes on the institutional and indeed even on the retail side? Are you starting to have some folks been put off by the crypto space as a result of this just incredibly large black eye? Or what are you hearing behind the scenes, and what are your thoughts on this whole FTX fiasco?
Sure. Yeah. FIA was definitely a different tenor than it was the year before, for sure. We've heard kind of the gamut of people that said, I told you so. These guys didn't know what they were doing. To be candid, we had kind of our own thoughts around some of these crypto native folks, that very intelligent people, but one of the kind of phrases that applies here is you don't know what you don't know. And so not having kind of the gray hair in the room, so to speak, or just experience in other capital markets, you just either don't know how to run a business or don't know how to run a risk book, or, kind of et cetera. All these things apply. And so, from that perspective, we definitely had thoughts around some of these people that have gotten into troubled waters, FTX obviously being the main one. I'd say from the kind of positive side, a lot of folks that we're talking to that are coming from other markets this is not obviously a positive in any way, shape, or form, but we're not hearing these people stop. They're not saying, I'm no longer getting into crypto. It's, I'm going to slow down a little bit. Now everybody on the compliance side is asking harder questions. Regulatory people are getting involved to make sure that we don't have challenges, and everybody's looking at kind of the quote unquote counterparty risk, either directly, if there's a trading relationship, or just reputationally. That's all very understandable. So, not great because, I think, 2021, it was a year of great enthusiasm. A lot of people wanted to get in, to the marketplace that had kind of stopped before. And some of those people did get in, but others were kind of building things out, taking a very intentional path forward. And now that's stalled out a bit with this. And, I think that will change kind of as more regulatory frameworks come in. as some of these questions get answered by people who did the wrong things. And as the kind of next cycle starts with hopefully better actors in place.
Hey, that's a good point. A lot of these crypto native folks coming from that side of the space, you're right. They simply just don't know what they don't know. They haven't been around this. They haven't done this enough. Obviously, FTX was also massive fraud on top of that. So compound the two, and it's just a recipe for a disaster. But still, you're right. A black eye across the board. We talked about an interesting data point. I think it came out of the Wall Street Journal recently about when retail traders first installed their crypto trading apps on their phones and what level Bitcoin was at the time. And the vast majority of them installed it when obviously Bitcoin was well north of 20,000 and a scary percentage, actually somewhere in the 50 to 60,000 range. It'd be interesting to see the flip side of that graph now. How many of them, Ryan, uninstalled post FTX? It might be an interesting data point, perhaps an alarming one for the industry as well. But you mentioned some of the interesting price action and the impact that's having on what you guys are doing over there at Mercury. Let's get to that now, a little bit of the old Bitcoin breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trending activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show we break down all the action in the world's leading digital asset. Yep, we're talking about the big dog, which is Bitcoin, which is pretty much around the same level that it was this time last week, which is always intriguing to see what kind of range we have on Bitcoin on the weekend. The answer this week is not a heck of a lot. We were on the show last week just shy of the 17,000 level. 16,914 is where we were this time last week. And coming into the show this week, about 100 points north of that, 110 to be precise. We're 17,025. So we're managing to hold on to the 17,000 level, but just barely. And how far did we get outside of that during the week? The answer is not a heck of a lot. The low was around 16,765 and the high was around 17,259 during the week. So again, from an Bitcoin perspective, where we've seen this thing rock'em sock'em move quite a bit over the span of just a few sessions, let alone a week. This is a pretty quiet week. Ryan, you mentioned at the start of the show that this is a challenging time, not just from a headline perspective, but also because we are still entrenched in this bear to now maybe sideways market. We've been hanging out at this 16 to 17,000 level, it seems like, for a while. What are your thoughts on what we're seeing out there from a price action perspective in Bitcoin? And also, how is this impacting the clients you're dealing with over there at Mercury? Is it maybe just bear market fatigue setting in? They're seeing red on the screen week after week, month after month. And it's, as you mentioned, a very sharp contrast to what we saw just last year in the crypto market, where it was all green all the time. So is maybe some of that fatigue starting to set in as well?
For sure. So I'd say kind of, obviously prices are down on the lower end where they've been. But, if you want to put on rose-colored glasses, you could say, had a year ago you told me the year plays out where in the spring the Terra Luna event plays out, there's all the kind of issues with lenders and some of the brokers that got into troubled waters, and then FTX hits later this fall, and there's kind of the scariness of the contagion that could occur, and we were still holding on to 17K. I would say, I probably wouldn't believe you. I would say, we're probably at 10K and probing lower to see if there's the bids fall through. So the fact that we're here, I guess, would be somewhat optimistic. There certainly could be more shoes to drop. There could be kind of other things that come out of this. And this is all kind of the FTX situation is unfolding when, the central banks are making changes on monetary policy at the same time, and everyone's looking at that. So certainly there could be, press lower, but it is somewhat encouraging that prices are here. And I'd say what we see is a lot of people are not enthusiastically buying right now like they were in kind of other times last year. Everyone's looking for what's that catalyst that's going to get prices back above, well clear of 20K in Bitcoin and kind of headed upwards on an upward trajectory. What we've seen for kind of our clients specifically is a lot of shift towards derivatives trading. So people are trading options. I think Deribit set another options or contract volume record last month. People are looking at, what do you do in a sideways market? What are you doing to trade with a little more leverage as opposed to just buying and holding and look for an upward price move.
Let's get out here, see what we're seeing from a vol and skew perspective. Remember, all these analytics coming at you courtesy of our friends over there at Genesis Volatility. gvol.io is the place to go. Actually, now rebranded during the acquisition. They are now Amber Data, so Amber Data derivatives. You can also look for that, but gvol.io will still work. If you go there, listeners, I'll get you access to all of this data, all these analytics we're going to talk about here, and a whole bunch more. And if you fire that up, you'd see that the current average at the money vol across the term structure out there in Bitcoin options on Deribit hanging out a little bit higher than it was this time last week. Not a heck of a large difference, really. 54.5 is where we were coming into the show today, 52 this week. So from a Bitcoin vol perspective, it's somewhat anemic. But then again, you look at it compared to other products you talk about a lot on the network, like your VIX, your equity vol, and a lot of other products out there, it's much higher. VIX is in the low 20s right now. So you're talking more than 2x Bitcoin vol. And of course, this is nowhere near as volatile as we've seen Bitcoin in the past. So intriguing times. And again, it also makes sense. We didn't really see a heck of a lot of movement last week. It was kind of a light, thin week. Not a lot of people really pouring into the Bitcoin or indeed the crypto markets last week. So that's going to be reflected in some of these numbers. Same thing out there with the 30-20 skew. Remember, that takes all the options in that 30 delta down to that 20 delta range and approximates them into one skew number for you. If you don't know what any of that means, listeners, you should be checking out our Options Bootcamp, Options Playbook radio programs here on the network that will give you much more insight into all these terms, so it won't be as confusing next time you check out the Crypto Rundown. Coming into showtime, that skew around the same level that it was this time last week. Still negative, about a -4. It was about a -3.5 on the show last week, so not a huge evolution there. It still is negative, but it's nowhere near as negative as it was in the last couple of weeks. And that reflects the fact that we've been managing to hold on to this 17,000 level for the last couple of weeks. So that really high level of downside concern has mitigated, at least for the time being. It still is a bearish skew, but all things considered, nowhere near as crazy as we've seen, even in recent weeks out here. Going out to the open interest, what is open out there on Deribit right now, listeners? We're still hanging out roughly 2-1. We're actually a little bit less this week. The puts have gained a little bit of ground this week. So usually we're seeing 2-1 calls over puts this week. Like I said, a little bit lower. 169,000 calls open on Deribit right now. It's up about 4,000 from this time last week. Puts wise, 92,000. It's up about 9,000. So a little bit of an uptick there in the puts, getting us a little bit inside that 2-1 calls over puts. For the first time in a while, that ratio has remained pretty firm on Bitcoin for quite some time. Let's go see what the size positions are in Bitcoin options right now. See if anything new is sneaking into our top 5. Number 5 out there, we have the 17,000 strike. It's got 11,400 contracts open. That is a newcomer to our top 5. So a little bit of evolution there in the top 5 this week. Number 4, the 15,000 strike. That's got 12,300 contracts open. That's down about 100 contracts. Again, not a huge evolution on the existing positions this week. Number 3, the 20,000 strike, 12,300 contracts open there as well. So kind of a bit of a tie for the number 3/4 spot this week. That is also a newcomer to the top 5. So far, we got 17,000, 15,000, and 20,000. Not too outlandish from a strike perspective. Number 2, we have the 19,000 strike that has 12,900 contracts open. That's up about 400. And the number 1 size position still in Bitcoin options. I think it's going to remain this way until December rolls off the board. It is the 30,000 strike that has 13,600 contracts open. That's also up about 400 this week. So Bitcoin is mostly hanging out in a relative strike range, at least, that is pretty relevant to where we're seeing Bitcoin trading right now, with the exception, obviously, of the 30,000 strike. When we get to some of the other altcoin out there, it might be a little bit more interesting to see what positions they have open. And again, looking at the volume over the past week, kind of a light week. We've seen a lot more paper going up, including, of course, about a month ago, we were in the middle of all the FTX madness. So they're putting up over 100,000, about 113,000 contracts were going up a month ago on Bitcoin. This week, not so much, about 26,900 contracts. That was the busiest day. That was back on the 9th, so on Friday. It's not a heck of a lot of paper lighting up the tape. Ryan, this is pretty much what you expected out there listening to these numbers out here from an overall Bitcoin derivatives perspective. Not a huge amount of evolution last week. Not a ton of volatility. Not a ton of really downside skew. And quite frankly, not a ton of action over the course of the past week. Is that pretty much what you saw out there at Mercury this week as well?
Yeah, I think so. It's getting into kind of year-end slowdown a little bit here. And then, people are waiting to see what happens this week, both from the kind of central bank Fed minutes and hopefully the testimony that happens with FTX's former CEO.
Yeah, that guy just won't shut up, will he?
he's on quite the tour.
He is. He is.
So hopefully we get a politician in Congress that steps up and asks some really hard questions. But it could be a bit of grandstanding and more fodder for the media cycle.
Yeah, this is that narcissism just writ large. He's speaking publicly even when it's demonstrably against his own best interests. So
yeah,
you have to kind of wonder what is going on at that point psychologically there. Interesting stuff here, but we're not a psychology show, right? We're a crypto show here, so let's get on with some of the crypto fun here. Let's get on out to the CME products. Ryan, I'm curious for you. You're obviously working over there at an exchange. You have your own token, so you have some familiarity with launching a new crypto products. What are your thoughts on the overall CME crypto offerings? Now, they launched with a lot of fanfare. A lot of people thought maybe the launch of the initial CME Bitcoin futures back in the end of 2017, that marked the high water point for that initial bull market run of Bitcoin, and that kind of kicked off that initial crypto winter there. So they have had some market impact. These days, not exactly lighting the world on fire. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on the CME Bitcoin and ETH products?
Yeah, I think they had a really successful futures launch. The challenges there were that the sizing of the contract is a bit too large for people that were kind of retail or purely outside of institutional. Some of that got corrected with the micro contract that they launched, but there's really not a viable options product there, right? So that's been where things have fallen down. We definitely hear people that want to kind of access that kind of onshore options market that just can't. And so that'll be an interesting development to see if somebody can really challenge CME. I know there was enthusiasm around people looking at Ledger X. Obviously, that's changed with FTX.
that has changed a little bit now, yes.
Yeah, but there's also like SIBO in their kind of acquisition of Eris X. And then Gemini is looking at derivatives. I know there's other players. So will somebody be able to stand up cause the CME either to kind of change some of the things that have not really gotten their options products launched the way that like an offshore venue like Deribit has? That'll be an interesting to see. And there's definitely more appetite. Like, what we hear is clients want that kind of infrastructure, regulatory safety, all the check boxes that like a CME hits, for example, and that probably will not change. This was, before FTX, some of the things like dealing with an intermediary network, the costs involved, all of that were part of the challenge, right? And not having a 24/7 marketplace where an underlying does trade 24/7. So, how much will this kind of in a post-FTX world change and get driven back on shore will be a very interesting thing to observe. We stand ready. Obviously, Tony and his business, all very option-centric. We want to see more venues be able to support this, have a more viable, kind of robust options ecosystem out there than just 95+% of the action happening on Deribit alone.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we're seeing out here on the CME front. You're right. The futures have done well, continue to do well, a little bit lighter now than they have, but still doing decent numbers. But for whatever reason, we have not seen that translate over into the options front. But for some of the reasons you mentioned, the size of the product was enormous when they launched it, 5x Bitcoin. Remember, listeners, back when it was at 60,000, that was just an untenable product, even for a lot of funds out there. These days, Bitcoin obviously a little bit lower, so it's a little bit more viable. And we did see some paper starting to float in there. We saw it get up to about 1,000, little over 1,000 contracts a week, which was a ton for this product that was trading in the early days, 20 contracts a week. And now we're kind of getting back to that latter portion again. Last week, we saw 41 contracts going up. And so far today, a whopping 2 contracts have traded this week. So not a lot of size yet on the big Bitcoin options over there at CME. And for whatever reason, that hasn't translated into the micro either. When they launched the micro, a lot of people were excited. This is going to finally be a right-sized product for retail out there. It's all centrally cleared. You don't have to worry about any of the issues that Ryan brought up there. It's a name that you've heard of, like CME, probably not going to go the way of the dodo like FTX, at least not anytime soon. So that is reassuring to a lot of people who maybe were a little bit dubious about crypto, and yet for whatever reason that hasn't translated into a lot of paper either. 4 contracts on the tape so far coming into showtime today, 58 last week, a whopping 168 the week before that. So the micro products, for whatever reason, continue to underwhelm out there. But you know what doesn't underwhelm out there is BITO. I'm curious for you, Ryan, what are your thoughts on this continually popular BITO product? Obviously, it launched last year. For a lot of the U.S. listeners of this show, this remains really the only viable options product that they could use to trade Bitcoin options on. And for a lot of them, it's holding up. I mean, the ADV is down a little bit this week. That's just because the crypto market really last week was pretty quiet. It was about 119,000 contracts ADV last week, down about 19,000 this week, still hanging out at 100,000 contracts a day. So that's nothing to sneeze at out there. Even if BITO itself coming into showtime, still unched, hanging out around 1060, the same level it was this time last week. What are your thoughts on BITO and the fact that it seems to be capturing a lot of attention out there, especially for U.S. options traders, Ryan?
Yeah, I think it's all about the distribution, right? Like you can go through the same thing that you trade SPYs with, or any other kind of ETF options product, and it fits in there. You don't have to do anything different. You don't have to think about what are the different kind of structures involved or risks. So, it's ready-made for that kind of audience, and it speaks to being able to smooth those things out in an easy way. You're going to get a successful product launch, and it just depends on how large you're able to amplify that message and translate it into even bigger success.
Let's see what's translating out there on the BITO options front. Let's look at the size positions out there. Let's do a quick top 5 so we can roll on into the altcoin universe. Number 5, we have 23,000 of the DEES 11 puts. Number 4, 34,000 of the January 10 puts. That 10 strike remains a point of fascination. We'll get back to that in a second, listeners. Number 3, 38,000 of the December 15 calls. Number 2, 39,000 back to the 10 strike. These are the December 30th 10 puts, so the end of year pretty much 10 puts. And the number 1 size position in BITO options, yet again, the DEES 10 puts, 54, almost 55,000 of those. In fact, since our last show last week, we saw a pretty sizable iron condor going up in BITO options. That just shows someone doesn't think Bitcoin or BITO really are going anywhere between now and the end of the year. And iron condor, listeners, if you're not familiar, again, you're usually buying or selling a strangle somewhere near close to the money, and then buying or selling another strangle against that a little bit farther out of the money. That's exactly what they did here. They came in and sold the 1011 strangle, which again, we're hanging out at about 1060. And that's pretty much where we were when this trade went up. Let's see, BITO was exactly 1060 when this trade went up. So they are betting, they sold that strangle. So they don't really expect BITO to go much beyond the 10 strike to the downside or the 11 strike to the upside. Looks like they sold it for 84 cents. And then on top of that, in case the worst comes to pass, they came back in and bought the 912 strangle against it. So if it drops below 9, they're protected. And if it runs away above 12, they're protected as well. And they bought that against it for, it looks like, 39 cents. So interesting little iron condor here. And again, kind of just goes to reinforce what we've been saying all show long, is that not a heck of a lot going on out there towards the end of the year in the Bitcoin market, and someone selling a whole bunch of premium in BITO to wager and put their money where their mouth is, that is going to stay that way, at least through the end of the year. As we keep on rolling into our next segment, it is time to explore the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, welcome to the altcoin universe, the portion of the show where we break down everything lighting it up out there outside of the big dog, which is Bitcoin, except for right now when we break down the top 10 from a market cap perspective. It cost you $7.7 billion to break into the top 10 of the market cap, so well shy of the even 10 billion floor that it was for quite some time out there. That gets you all the way to Polygon, still holding out at number 10. Number 9, we got Cardano, about $10.5 billion worth of market cap. Number 8, Stubbornly persistent is Dogecoin, 11.7 billion with the market cap. Number 7, XRP, about 19 billion. Number 6, it's Binance USD, 22. Then we jump up to number 5 once again, a USD coin, 42.5 billion. Number 4, BNB, 43, almost 44 billion, just a tick below it. Number 3, it's Tether, 65.7 billion. Number 2, you know it, you love it, it's ETH, 153.5 billion. And the big dog this week, Bitcoin, 327.5 billion worth of market cap. Let's get on out now to ETH, and very similar trajectory, almost identical trajectory to what we saw in Bitcoin this week, which amounts to a whole heck of a lot of nothing. We are up exactly $1.32 from where we were this time last week, listeners. We were $12.51 on the show last week and change, $12.52 and change coming into the start of the show this week. So a whole heck of a lot of nothing. In between, we did see a little bit wider range. We got up to as high as $12.88. That was back on Friday the 9th, which is the most active day of the week for most of the crypto products last week. And the low came on Wednesday of around $12.24. But outside of that, a whole heck of a lot of nothing. Ryan, I know a lot of our audience out there, Bitcoin gets all the headlines, but a lot of them, ETH is very near and dear to their hearts. What are your thoughts on what we're seeing out there in ETH? And also, how popular is ETH over there at Mercury these days?
Yeah, it's dimmed a little bit since the merge in, September? That was, run up to that was very kind of intensive in ETH and trading ETH derivatives. So that's cooled a little bit. There's definitely people that love to trade kind of altcoins that are clients of our clients. And so we'll see kind of whatever pops up as maybe flavor of the day or kind of hot trade, so to speak. So, Ape we saw in springtime when that came out, a lot of volume popping around that. And then, recently like Solana, due to the kind of closeness they had with Alameda and FTX entities, that, people are looking to express opinion, whether that's them going to zero or somehow being able to make kind of a comeback, dictating whether they're buying, selling, or trying to do some kind of more involved strategy.
Solana. We'll get there in a little bit. Or maybe we won't get to that much this week in Solana, listeners. We'll get there again, like I said, in a little bit. Let's get out to what's going on from a vol perspective in ETH right now. And again, we said very similar trajectory to what we're seeing in Bitcoin in ETH this week. We were at a whopping 73 last week, and it's a whopping 72 this week. So down 1 point from a vol perspective. Skew wise, almost the exact same thing we're seeing as in Bitcoin. We were negative 3.7 last week, a whopping negative 3.8 from a skew perspective this week. So $1 range, pretty much a whole heck of a lot of nothing out there on the week, listeners. Let's get on out to the OI. And this is one of the first times I've seen this since we've been doing this show all the way back. I think it started, 2018 now? It seems like it's the new kid on the block to me, even though it's been running for 4 years. Again, the network has quite a history to it. And this one is still the new kid. Again, it's already 4 years old. Let's get out to the calls. And they are pretty much unched at 3.1 million contracts open on Deribit. The puts, 759,000 open there. Also unched, also hanging out. Still at a little bit north of 4-1, which is pretty much where they've been hanging out from a ratio perspective for better part of the last few months. Let's go check out what the size positions are in ETH. And these are where ETH tends to break away a little bit from Bitcoin. Bitcoin, we saw the size positions were all fairly relevant strikes. In ETH, for whatever reason, they remain, shall we say, optimistic strikes. Number 5, we have the 2,500 strikes, got 141,000 contracts open. That's up about 1,000. Number 4, we have the 1,600 strike. That is pretty much the most relevant strike in our top 5 this week. That's got 178,000 contracts open. That's down about 7,000 this week. Number 3, now we're back up to it, listeners. The 3,500 strike. 281,000 contracts are open there. That's up about 4,000 this week. Number 2, getting way out there, the 4,000 strike, 334,000 contracts open there. It's up about 5,000 this week. And the number 1 size position still in ETH options, it remains the 3,000 strike with 335,000 contracts open. That's down about 1,000. Again, not a lot of evolution in our top 5 this week, but it is still fascinating to watch that the D3000 strike remains just the big dog in ETH land. Once December rolls off the board, I have a feeling a lot of these more, shall we say, optimistic strikes are going to go the way of the dodo. We'll see the top 5 restructure itself into positions, let's say around the 2,000 strike and maybe somewhat more relevant strikes than what we're seeing right now. A lot of this is the remnants of some of the vestigial paper we used to see back when ETH was trading at a different level. In terms of action, how much was trading this week? Like we said, not a heck of a lot of action this week. A whopping 337,000 contracts. That was the busiest day this week. That was on Friday. That compares to our last show with 590,000 contracts. And back in all the FTX madness, we got over 1.2 million ETH contracts going up on Deribit. This past week, 337,000 contracts, roughly a quarter of that big explosion around FTX time. So not exactly a banger week, and not exactly a banger week out there on the CME front either. We saw a whopping 26 of the big Ether options going up this week. That compares to 132 last week. So not terrible, but not exactly lighting the world on fire. What's really surprising is how the micro ETH options have kind of fallen off a cliff. For a while there, they were actually doing some numbers. And then recently, it seems like that is just all withered and dried up. We saw a whopping 56 going up last week and a whopping 4 so far this week. That compares to, we saw weeks with 10, 15, 17,000 some weeks not too long ago. So whatever was going on to drive that paper in the micro ETH option seems to have withered and died. Speaking of withering and dying, Solana is this product that still a lot of questions circle around it. As you remember, listeners, of course, we added this to the show not too long ago. It was right up there alongside ETH and Bitcoin in terms of we spent a lot of time really breaking down the vol, the top positions, the skew. We kind of threw all that to the wayside post FTX for the reasons Ryan laid out. FTX and Solana very closely linked out there. There are still a lot of questions circling around the Solana ecosystem right now. And as a result, we've seen Solana take a huge price hit that has continued this week. It was $13.61 on the show last week, $13.21 this week, down another 40 cents. And also, as a result, when you see a product dropping, getting cut more than in half, getting to a much lower level, it also removes a lot of the use case for options out there. There isn't as much of an incentive to buy a call on Solana when it's trading around a 10 handle as it is when it's a 30 or above. So interesting stuff. Again, not a lot of movement, not a lot of action from a vol or from an options perspective, and also a lot of legitimate questions about the future of this product. So we're not highlighting it in terms of the detail we used to. We'll keep an eye on it, though, and we'll come back to it if we see anything evolve. As you mentioned earlier, Ryan, Solana has kind of gotten itself caught up in all of this FTX madness. It sounds like, though, you're seeing some paper over there at Mercury that folks are coming in to maybe play Solana a little bit more these days?
I mean, we're not seeing that as much as I definitely hear it. And I know people are kind of out there running those strategies. So, there's, if you want to call it degen crowd or just taking a flyer, whatever you want to say about, kind of somebody who's looking for that mega comeback and maybe being able to find a outsized return, when it's been a challenging year to find anything like that. That's probably what that's attributable to.
People have been waiting for an outsized return in XRP forever. Doesn't seem like they're going to get it this week. XRP down about 0.5 cent on the week. And again, this is just yet another reminder, another product that people have had so many questions about. They've been swirling for so long. It doesn't seem like we're going to get any answers anytime soon. Dogecoin, that's its own separate beast. Almost a dime last week, listeners. 9.9 cents on the show last week. This week, 8.8 cents. So coming in a wee bit. So all you Doge aficionados out there, unfortunately, this hasn't been the banger week for you. Litecoin also given up some of its past glory as well. It was pretty much exactly $80 on the show last week. 74.81 coming into the show this week, so down a little over $5. Cardano taking a bit of a break this week as well. 31.7 on the show last week, about 30.3 cents this week. So a little bit of some downside. And Polkadot, 5.45 last week, 5.12 this week, down about 33 cents. And Shiba Inu continues to go the way of the dodo. As we continue to go on into our final segment, it is time for your crypto questions.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, everybody, welcome to the crypto questions. I'll pay off our question of the week last week. Then, Ryan, we have a live chat question here from one of our listeners that I want to get your thoughts on. But first, we asked you folks last week, what is your favorite new? I put new in quotes because BITO didn't launch this year. It actually launched last year, but it is new to a lot of you out there. So he said, what is your favorite new option product that you've added to your trading arsenal this year? Gave you 3 choices, plus the infamous other. Gave you BITO options, SPX daily options, or the universe of vol ETPs, so your SVIXs, your UVIXs, your SPKYs, and so on and so forth, or other. And as I kind of expected, BITO ran away with it early. I think maybe it was just we did the crypto rundown show and all the crypto folks came in and they voted early. And as the week progressed, all the folks who've been slinging a ton of those SPX daily options dove into the poll. And at the end of the week, listeners, it was a runaway landslide for SPX daily options. 71%. It makes sense looking at the numbers. We're just breaking this down earlier today on the option block program. And somewhere around 30 to 35 or 36 of the top 40 most active contracts in SPX every day are now 0 DT. They're expiring that same day. So it's just been a sea change in how folks trade SPX, including a lot of institutions, which is just fascinating. So 71% of you choosing SPX daily options. No real surprise there. Number 2 was our friend BITO. BITO options, 16.1%. Number 3, a 9.7% going for the vol ETPs, 3.2% only for other this week. And then we'll get out to our live chat here. Ryan, our live listener, Nichols, wants to know, how does Ryan think the FTX disaster will impact the U.S. regulatory scene for crypto? Will it make it easier or harder to trade crypto going forward? Ryan, this is kind of the $1 million question. Obviously, you mentioned SBF is speaking before Congress. Now that will obviously impact how regulation goes going forward. But Nichols, I'm sure a lot of our other listeners want to know, how do you think this whole FTX disaster is going to impact the regulatory scene in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think it'll be kind of short-term pain, long-term kind of gain type thing. So it's definitely going to push more of the kind of regulatory frameworks that are out there now, whether that's like a CFTC one or SEC. So people that kind of exist within those spaces now are going to be able to, or most likely would be the ones that benefit from this. So think of the kind of broker dealers or FCMs, those kind of firms that deal in other products and forcing kind of crypto into those kind of frameworks. So that introduces some challenges. It may be difficult to kind of project out what it means for like a user experience, but I think like, you know, if we're able to kind of get down to it in the medium to longer term, like being able to have like a more viable kind of crypto product that it doesn't have these risks is probably beneficial for everyone, right? Like you don't want to worry if you're an individual investor or trader that the firm you're dealing with is going to do something like what happened to FTX going forward. Like that doesn't benefit anyone. So the business operators are going to have to deal with a lot of compliance issues, a lot of kind of regulatory requirements, all those things. That happens like kind of all day, every day in other markets. So having to do it in crypto is going to be painful for them. It's going to add in kind of more costs to do that. So hopefully that doesn't get pushed on to the consumer. But, you know, having a safer kind of environment, whether it's a broker or an exchange that you're dealing with, is ultimately more beneficial. And then, you know, people that play by the rules, hopefully getting rewarded. There's more competition in there to kind of compete for consumer attention.
All right, listeners, that music means you've come to the end of another epic journey through the world of all things crypto. Ryan, I want to thank you for joining us today in the hot seat and to give us your thoughts on all the action and all the madness going on out there in the world of crypto. Really quickly before we go, if folks want to check out what you and the team at Liquid Mercury are up to, where should they go? What should they do?
Yep, just go to liquidmercury.com. It's our website and gives kind of what we do as a business and our different product offerings.
There you go, liquidmercury.com. Pretty easy to check out. And of course, you know where to go if you want to learn more about all the analytics and everything else we were talking about on the show today. gvol.io, that is Genesis Volatility. Or check them out via their new name, Amber Data, AMBERDATA.io. You can go there as well. Either way, that'll get you to all the analytics we're talking about on the show today and a whole bunch more. That's going to do it for us on the network today. Back again tomorrow. Another great pro Q&A session for all of our pro listeners. Back again on Wednesday for a whole bunch of great educational content, options, bootcamp, options, playbook radio coming at you there. And then on Thursday, we have episode 2 for the week of the option block, as well as, of course, for a lot of listeners of this show, This Week in Futures Options that we do with CME, talking about all things, including the crypto contracts over there. So if you're listening to this show, you should be checking out TWIFO Friday, of course, volatility views, and back for all you pro folks with options oddities. And we come back again next week, another episode of the Crypto Rundown. Stay safe out there, everybody.
This program is brought to you by Genesis Volatility, also known as GVol, home of institutional-grade crypto options analytics. Whether you're trading CeFi options or DeFi options, cryptocurrencies move. Use GVol Analytics to analyze implied volatility, model realized volatility, structure positions, and unlock alpha. For more information, visit gvol.io. That's GVOL.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.